But Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My Siti, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me.
United States of America funding in solidarity the people of Israel in defense of their right to exist. That by virtue of our position as Americans, standing in front of that flag in this chamber representing 330 million Americans.
In this explosive episode of Jesse Reacts, we break down one of the most heated moments ever witnessed on the House floor, Rashida Tlaib's shocking defense of pro-Hamas rhetoric. Just days after the brutal terrorist attacks against innocent Israelis, Tlaib doubled down, repeating the phrase "from the river to the sea," a slogan long tied to the destruction of Israel. While some Democrats tried to hide behind the banner of free speech, millions of Americans are asking a harder question. When did freedom of speech become freedom from accountability?
It is about. With that, I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Georgia for his time, and with respect to the gentleman from Maryland, I understand the perspectives with respect.
In this explosive episode of Jesse Reacts, we dive deep into one of the most heated and divisive moments in recent congressional history, a speech that reignited fierce debate over free speech, morality, and the very soul of American values. On the House floor, Representative Rashida Tlaib delivered remarks that shook the chamber and split the nation. Her defense of a phrase long associated with the eradication of Israel wasn't just controversial, it was a moral earthquake that left even her allies scrambling for distance. The timing couldn't have been more volatile. Just days after the world watched in horror as Hamas launched a brutal terrorist attack on innocent Israeli civilians, families slaughtered in their homes, children kidnapped, entire communities burned, emotions were raw and outrage was widespread across America. Flags were lowered, vigils were held, and leaders on both sides of the aisle expressed solidarity with Israel's right to exist and defend itself. But amid the mourning and grief, Tlaib stood at the podium and repeated a phrase that many view as a call for Israel's destruction. From the river to the sea, to some, it was an act of defiance. To others, a shocking display of insensitivity. But regardless of where one stands politically, it forced the country to confront an uncomfortable question. When did freedom of speech become freedom from accountability? Let's unpack this moment, not as partisans, but as Americans who still believe that words matter.
To free speech, and I certainly wish to always stand aside the protection of free speech in this country. But this goes well beyond that, because we're not talking about restraining the gentleladies from Michigan's ability to speak as an American citizen. We're not talking about punishing her, putting her in jail. What we're talking about is whether a member of the United States House of Representatives, whether a member of this body representing this nation.
Rashida Tlaib, a member of the so-called squad, has built a reputation for being unapologetically outspoken on issues related to Palestine. Her supporters see her as a courageous truth-teller willing to challenge the establishment. Her critics see her as reckless, someone who uses her platform to normalize extremist rhetoric under the guise of activism. When she stood before Congress to defend her words, she didn't back down. She doubled down, claiming that the slogan was a call for freedom and equality. Yet for millions across the world, the phrase "from the river to the sea" is not about coexistence. It's a political chant envisioning a world where Israel no longer exists, where Jews are erased from the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. That slogan isn't new. It has been shouted by groups like Hamas for decades, often just before attacks. It is tied not to peace but to destruction, and its historical baggage cannot be ignored. Tlaib's use of it, especially in the immediate aftermath of mass murder and hostage-taking, wasn't just tone-deaf. It was incendiary.
Is justified in putting forward a defense of the actions of Hamas terrorists that murdered innocent Israeli citizens, is holding United States citizens and Israelis hostage, and in her own language was defending on October 8th, a mere 24 hours into the brutal and barbaric attacks in which babies were beheaded, babies were placed into ovens, literally.
The backlash was immediate. Lawmakers, journalists, and citizens demanded consequences. Some members of Congress moved to formally censure her, a rare act of public condemnation. The debate that followed wasn't just about politics. It was about the moral boundary between free expression and hate speech. Democrats were caught in a moral and political trap. A handful defended her, arguing that punishing her would endanger free speech. Others, including members of her own party, couldn't justify the rhetoric. They insisted that invoking a slogan used by terrorist organizations was indefensible. No matter who said it, Republicans seized the moment to highlight what they saw as hypocrisy, a double standard that punishes conservatives for words far less inflammatory. One representative said pointedly, if a Republican used language echoing neo-Nazi slogans, they'd be driven out of office. Why should this be different? The chamber erupted in tension. Accusations of racism, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism were thrown back and forth. But beneath the shouting, one undeniable truth remained. Words have consequences.
Moms were raped in a house while their babies were put in an oven. A documented account, video evidence. And this is dismissed as resistance to an apartheid state. My problem is that the gentlelady is also referring to, quote, Joe Biden supporting the genocide of the Palestinian people. The gentlelady has put forward that by virtue of the United States...
The episode reignited a debate as old as the Republic itself. Where does free speech end and moral responsibility begin? The First Amendment protects citizens from government censorship, but it doesn't protect them from social or moral consequence. You can say almost anything in America, but that doesn't mean others must stay silent about it. Supporters of Tlaib insist she was simply defending Palestinian rights. Her critics argue she was promoting a slogan synonymous with the annihilation of a nation. The divide isn't merely political, it's philosophical. Freedom of speech has too often been twisted into a shield for recklessness. We see it on college campuses, on social media, and now even in Congress. The idea that being free to speak means being free from responsibility for what you say. But democracy doesn't work that way. Rights come with duties. Power comes with restraint. Speech, especially from those in leadership, must be anchored in truth, empathy, and respect for life.
Of America funding in solidarity the people of Israel in defense of their right to exist, that by virtue of our position as Americans, standing in front of that flag in this chamber representing 330 million Americans, that by funding and supporting Israel, we are somehow perpetuating the call for violence that we saw unfold right before our eyes on October 7th. In the most brutal and heinous acts that some of us have ever seen. I do not doubt the gentlelady's sincerity of her concern.
Beyond politics, this controversy revealed deeper sickness in our public discourse. In moments of tragedy, America once came together. We cried together, prayed together, rebuilt together. But now, every crisis becomes a new battlefield in a never-ending culture war. Tlaib's comments didn't just offend, they symbolized a collapse of empathy. a refusal to see the pain of others, a politics more interested in slogans than solutions. Jewish students across universities began reporting harassment and fear. Pro-Palestinian rallies filled the streets, some peaceful, some openly calling for violence. Social media turned into a war zone of misinformation and rage. In the middle of all that chaos, one fact was clear. When leaders abandon empathy, the public follows.
For her home people and concerns about the attacks on the people of Gaza. I had some people who called into question that I would put out my public support for my former colleague, Justin Amash, who lost cousins in a church, receiving missile fire into a building next to a church. I genuinely pray for the people of Israel, the people of Gaza, the people throughout the world that are now dealing with all of this. But the gentlelady cannot, as a member of Congress, be standing up and telling the...
So where do we go from here? The answer is not censorship, nor silence. It is balance, the rediscovery of moral responsibility in a world obsessed with outrage. We must remember that freedom of speech is not freedom from criticism. And disagreement is not hate. True democracy depends on the courage to listen, even to those we oppose, while holding everyone, including ourselves, to the same standard of integrity. Rashida Tlaib's words were more than political theater. They were a mirror reflecting our moral confusion. Are we still a nation that values truth over tribalism? Or have we grown so divided that we can no longer tell the difference between conviction and extremism? This controversy is not about one congresswoman, it's about who we are becoming as a country. Because if we continue to excuse dangerous words as just opinions, we risk normalizing hatred disguised as activism. Freedom without responsibility is chaos. And chaos never built a nation.
World that what we saw unfold in attacking Israel is justified. We can't. Free speech matters. I have grave concern right now about where this institution is going with respect to censures. I voted against the censure last week because I thought it had drafting problems and I thought it had significant concerns it raised. I believe the work that was done by my friend from Georgia here put forward a resolution that is worthy of support. And so I support the resolution and believe that we should pass it. I thank the gentleman from Georgia.
Reserved.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I recognize the gentlelady from Massachusetts for 1 minute.
The gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this censure resolution that is blatantly Islamophobic, anti-democratic, and an utter waste of time. This resolution is as dishonest as it is unproductive. Any member who denies that Congresswoman Tlaib is opposed to the killing of civilians, Israeli, Palestinian, and Americans alike, is willfully ignoring the truth. Representative Tlaib was elected by voters in Michigan to do exactly what she does best: advocate for a better, safer, more just world. She leads with love, speaks truth to power, and seeks justice even when her life and that of her family and her staff are threatened. As a daughter, mother, sister, friend, advocate, and effective duly elected three-term first ever Palestinian American member of Congress, she has been a much-needed voice in an institution that has too often failed to listen. Today, Republicans are again attacking a Democratic colleague just because they don't like what she has to say.
As this episode of Jesse Reacts concludes, the message is clear. Words matter. They can heal, or they can harm. They can unite, or they can divide. And when spoken by those in power, they can change the course of nations. We live in an age where viral moments replace real dialogue, where hashtags replace thought. But it's not too late to return to substance, to decency, to truth. So let's ask ourselves, not as partisans, but as people, what kind of freedom do we want? One that excuses destruction, or one that demands accountability? Because free speech means nothing if it's not guided by conscience. And in times of darkness, conscience is the only light we have left.